Wow, what do you know? It's time for the Pocket Knife Show. Hey, it's Mike on the mic again for another episode of the Pocket Knife Podcast. Anyone listening feel hometownless? I'm not suggesting you don't know where you were born or where you grew up. I think we all know where we took our first breaths. I'm talking about folks like me who didn't live in the same town long enough to make it feel like, if I go to this town, I'm home. Honestly, if I went back to the city in which I was born, I'm not sure I could find a single person who knows me. There are probably few in any of the first towns I lived in who would remember me, though they might have a recollection of my parents. It's not until I consider the final few places I lived in prior to my high school graduation that I believe I could track down a few friends who would recognize me or at least recall my name after I said it. I didn't, after all, have a scraggly beard and white hair when I left said villages. I was a skinny, geeky kid and then a skinny, geeky teen. I don't know, maybe I've still got enough skinny, geeky left to trigger some kind of memory. Who knows? About 17 years ago, I returned to the town where I lived when I graduated from high school. I was there for a class reunion and a reunion concert of a teen choir which I was in with my siblings and dozens of others at our church. It was fun to see people I hadn't seen in decades and to talk with them, sing with them, reminisce. The presence of my siblings and I didn't create much of a stir in the small Iowa burg during our 4 or 5 day stay. Someone more famous from a town far, far away would have created more buzz than the four of us did. We find Jesus at the end of Matthew 13 making his way back home after some time away. His arrival creates far more waves than you or I or anyone we know would ever make. Folks young and old have heard of his exploits. They want to see if there's any truth to the rumors they've heard. Is the skinny kid who left a while back really as big a deal as people make him out to be in the stories? Listen to what happens when Jesus strolls into town. Coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers, they asked. Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary, and aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? Where did this man get all these things? And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home. And he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. They were offended by Jesus. They asked derisively, who's this punk kid coming back here to tell us what to do? Maybe someone brought up the crazy birth narrative Mary had given them when she was pregnant with Jesus. Perhaps the stigma of his seeming illegitimacy played a part in their rejection. We can speculate on the whys and wherefores, I suppose, but in the end, they don't matter much. Jesus finds a staggering lack of faith in the village he grew up in. He did a few miracles, but not as many as perhaps he'd like to have done. Only a handful of people had enough faith to trust him, to trust God with their needs. I guess we should take heed and recognize our own tendency to discount words from God when they're spoken by someone we've known for years. We're more likely to accept a message from someone far from us who doesn't know us than we are to receive it from a friend or family member. The Spirit is in each believer, and we can hear from God through anyone who knows Jesus, so let's be open to what God has to say to us through whomever he sends to speak it. If your kids are believers, let God speak through them to you. If your grandfather has been faithful to God for many, many years, pay attention to what God may be saying through him. That friend who accepted Christ years after you did, she may now be God's mouthpiece to you. Anyone who is faithful to God and walks by the Spirit can speak truth or comfort or correction into your life. Friends, trust the Spirit. Pay attention to every believer he sends your way. Don't discount any message because its speaker is too familiar.
Oh no, it's sad I know we've come to the end of the show.
See you next time.